Favorite line from the third book. You want to hear it? Yeah. All right. Favorite line from the third book is uttered by one of the monsters, the Urgles. And he says, "Die, puny human." And my opinion is that it's not worth writing fantasy if you can't write lines like, "Die, puny human." Long answer to a short question, but I hope it was an entertaining answer. I'll take a few more questions here. Yes? Sorry, say that again? When's my fourth book going to come out? You know, my publisher wants to know that too. It's going to come out as fast as I can possibly write it. I am writing it as fast as I can possibly write it. And it is going to have a green dragon on the cover. Yeah. No comment. Depends if it's going to be as long as Atlas Shrugged or not. But you know what? You know what? Let me tell you something. I have been working on this series for 11 years, just about. I am so sick of it. I can't wait for it to be done. Listen, listen, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you what happens in the last page, okay? Yes. You can't stop me. Here it is. On the last page of the last chapter, the last book of the Inheritance Cycle, it's going to say, the end. Yes? How did I come up with the ancient language? I feel a little embarrassed saying this in front of such educated people because there are some real experts here today. But the truth of it is I based the ancient language partly on Old Norse. And I did that because the very first ancient language word in the book is Brissinger, which means fire. And it showed up in a dictionary of word origins that I had as a root word for fire. And I loved the sound of it and the look of it, so I looked at more Old Norse words and I used that as the basis for the ancient language. There are actually whole websites dedicated to telling you how to invent imaginary languages with proper grammar and rules and all that stuff. But I love the sound it gave the ancient language. Now, I am not an elf. And I cannot trill my R's on the tip of my tongue like an elf or like an Italian. I can trill my R's in the back of my throat using my uvula, which apparently is very rare, but that's what the dwarves do. But in any case, please excuse my horrendous elvish accent, but a section of the ancient language might sound something like which is the elvish blessing in eldest. And a section of dwarvish, unfortunately I don't remember any at the moment and I don't have a copy of eldest in front of me. If I did, I might be able to read you some. And just you watch, one's going to show up in front of me before you know it. Was there another question back? Yes. Yes.
How do you keep yourself from going off on tangents while you're writing?
How do I keep myself from going off tangents when I'm writing? Have you seen the size of my books?
It could be worse.
The first draft of Brissinger was over 300,000 words long. No, I write every tangent because it's easier to write it the first time and cut it later than it is to add later. So the main thing is trying to keep a nice pace to the story if you can. The problem is, and a lot of fantasy authors have this, is when you create a big world, when you put all the energy into creating a world, you want to share it with the reader. And that desire to share can end up taking you on tangents, and you have to keep control of it. That's one reason why almost no fantasy author ever writes a single book set in a world, because you put so much effort into creating it, it's not worth doing it for a single book. Okay, so let me do a chunk of Dwarvish, which I created from scratch. Save a couple of dwarves that have Nordic names, such as, of course, King Hrothgar. Well, actually, it's Anglo-Saxon. Or in the third book, I named a dwarf after an Icelandic warrior, a male Icelandic warrior that I saw in one of the sagas. And his name was, Oh yes, I remember. So imagine this big, scary Viking, and he breaks down your door, right? And he's got an axe in his hand, and he says, "Tremble with fear, for I am Flossie the warrior." So there is a male dwarf in my third book that's named Flossie. Okay, so here's a chunk of dwarvish. Form Hrathkarach, Form Jürgen Carmeter, Nos etan Gorov Bastarna, Dur Ancesti Rakithin, Yok is Word Aj Berzuligur, Dur Durgrims Aj Wilderak Anuin, Mog Tor Rak Jürgenfren. As you might imagine, dwarves do not write many love poems. And they usually are very, very hoarse. But they do have lots of fun, and I've always said that if I could go into my world, I would love to go with the dwarves, because the elves are nice, the elves are pretty, the elves are wise, the elves are beautiful, the elves are everything elves are, they're also very, very boring. And they love to tell you what you've done wrong. So I would like to go visit the dwarves and sit with the dwarves and have a mug of mead and listen to their stories and write a dwarf opera. And I've threatened my agent that I'll write a dwarf opera someday, at which point he laughed and said it would sell. But I think the only way to stage a dwarf opera would be with guys dressed as Klingons, of course. And now you know the things I dream of. Oh, jeez. By the railing.
What's your favorite book?
What's my favorite book? How long do you have? I love many, many books. I couldn't possibly pick a favorite. If I had to pick a few, I would say Dune, Anna Karenina, A Wizard of Earthsea, The Worm Ouroboros by E.R. Edison, and probably something very, very pulpy that I would read when I was on the desert island. So, Edgar Rice Burroughs, yeah, something like that. Something to leaven that out. Yes, in the middle. Do I have any other stories in the works? I do. I've got so many stories in the works, I'll probably be working on them for the rest of my life. I am a devoted slave. I have to finish the series first, and then I have a whole bunch of stories. Some are science fiction, some are fantasy, some are romance, some are historical fiction, some are mysteries, thrillers, just about every type of story you can imagine. But first, I have to finish the next book. And then I'm going to have a nervous breakdown and take a nice long break, and then I'll pick a new project. Yes?
Do you have any titles for the books in progress?
What'd you say, Steve? Okay. Any titles? I've named a few of the books in progress, but not all of them. Brissinger was a very hard book to name. I only got the name, boy, pretty close to when it went to press. I only named The Red Dragon Thorn in the second book the day before the book went to press, believe it or not. But I've named the fourth book even before I started it. Ha! But I'm not telling you. If I've already answered a question from you, please sit down. I want to answer someone's question I haven't answered before. Yes? Why did I decide to put a shade in Brissinger? Was that the question? Well, I don't want to spoil Brissinger for anyone who hasn't read it, but let's say I did it for sake of balance. I wanted a good ending there, and because it balances things between Aragon and Arya very well, as far as the story. Oh, well, yeah.